I'm now joined by Steve Osho, a fixed income trader at Stanbic IBTC. Steve, thank you so much for joining us. And like I mentioned, the big focus on the central bank governor's maiden address to the press today. But before that, let's talk a bit about the stability we're seeing in the naira. I think one thing that is very clear is that this governor is dealing with a more stable economy, more stable banking sector, a more stable naira. But for how long can that be? Your thoughts on the stability we're seeing in the naira right now?
Well, morning, Wale, and thanks for having me. I think the stability we've seen on Naira has been as a result of a lot of factors. We've seen some flows come through from offshore investors who have renewed appetite at the beginning of the second quarter. And we've seen some actually flows to come through from oil majors who've been selling to the market. By and large, we've seen a kind of reduced pressure too coming from the corporate demands in the interbank market too. So all these combined together are really responsible for the stability seen on the exchange.
Right, and recently we saw that RDAS auction, $200 million sold. It's slowing down a little bit from what we've seen recently. Your take on the pressure we may see on the reserves going forward?
Well, if you put all those statistics together, the possibility is there that, and the production still remains stable as it is right now. So we see the possibility of actually accruing more into the reserves going forward, and which is actually good for the economy.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on to the bond market. A bond auction holding next week, and I see only 35 billion naira is being auctioned. It sounds like a pretty slow, low number given what we've seen in the past. Your take on why it's so low and the bonds that are being offered this time?
Well, I think the amount on offer has actually been relatively the same for the past 3 months. Last auction too, we saw 35 billion each offered on 2016 and 2024 maturity. And if you go by the language or the fillers coming from the DMO, you've seen that they want to reduce the kind of borrowings, the amount of borrowing in local debt this year. So that actually might be responsible for the amount, for the reduced amount that we're seeing at that window.
And so what about the bonds that on offer 2016 and 2024 is what I'm hearing. Why do you think they're picking these bonds right now?
Well, it's actually part of what they've issued, they've put up in their calendar for this quarter. They have a shelf program on the 2016s and the 2024 maturities, which they are retapping again. So I don't think anything has changed from what they've advised the market from the beginning of this year.
All right, and let's reflect a bit about this meeting press briefing by the new central bank governor. What would you like to hear from? What do you think the market would like to hear from the governor today?
Well, I think we've had a bit of his agenda when he was at the House, at the Senate last time for screening. So I think going forward, it's going to still revolve around the consolidations of all the achievements that have been done by the previous regime. Then I think the market will want to know what will be his policy in terms of exchange rates and his policies as around the interest rate regime, considering the fact that the volatility we've seen on the exchange for the past few months and few years, which have actually resulted in some gains now by the previous regime, which has actually achieved a bit of stability in that expense. So I think markets will be looking forward to what will be his own program, what will be his agenda around this exchange, how they want to defend the currency, what's the outlook like, and again around the interest rate.
Yeah, I was discussing this issue with a trader recently, and I want to hear your thoughts on this point. How difficult do you think the task will be to keep that naira stable going into an election year next year?
Well, I think it's going to be very tough, considering the fact that if you go by history, closing to election period is always time that you see a lot of government spending. Actually, we might put pressures actually on the exchange. But, well, as a man of vision and a man of high value, and which markets actually respect a lot, I'm sure he have his own agenda and he have his own plan towards actually achieving all these aims and strategy going forward.
Another issue I think will be keeping the foreign investors interested. You know, the flows that we've seen over the last few years, they've now become pretty important in keeping the naira stable. And now that we're seeing yields come down quite a bit, how tough do you think that would be going forward?
I think it's going to be very tough, we've seen some kind of support around 10 levels on government securities. And going by the auction we saw even on the TVs yesterday, we saw a kind of rebound to 1045 from 10.125 levels at the previous auction, which shows direction that a lot of people actually will slow down at this point. So I think putting that in view, as long as we see some kind of supply coming through from the OMO issuance, which actually been moderated for some time, I think the interest on government security will still be there. And if you compare Nigerian market with other emerging markets too, I think at this point there's still some values in our interest in our yield. So that actually could see some support coming through from offshore interest and combined efforts of oil flows from oil majors. Sorry, from FX flows from oil majors.
All right, great.